So my name is Toby Adewadu. I am with the Apis and Heritage team. We have two of our co-founders and partners here today. So I'm the head of investor relations for Apis and Heritage. I've been with the team for a little over a year in different capacities. Today I'm joined by Michael Brownrigg, Todd Leverette, also two of our team members here, Jung Young is our investment associate, and then Melissa Hoover is an external consultant. They're parts of our A&H team. So just wanted to give you guys an overview. We'll be around SOCAP throughout the next couple of days, so feel free to talk to us in different capacities. Also, if there are any people that have talked to Apis and Heritage at different points and have received an email from me in any manner, might be an investor, I would love to put a face to a name before the end of the weekend here. To give you guys just a quick overview of what we do at A&H, we are a private credit firm that uses employee ownership to create broad-based wealth. What we really truly focus on is closing the wealth gap by focusing on buying small and medium-sized businesses with a majority of a workforce with low and moderate income workers. We were established in 2021. We have 6 portfolio companies in our Fund 1, and we're currently in the market raising our Fund 2 right now. For you guys, just in terms of a quick overview of what this session will look like, this is supposed to be a guided and interactive networking session. We'll kind of be moving around the room, and you guys will get a chance to incorporate us in different conversations. But the whole idea here is to actually create a networking session based off of people here in the room and really discuss employee ownership. Really take time to build a network on employee ownership and focus on some specific themes around employee ownership. And so whether this is an introduction to employee ownership for you or you currently work in the employee ownership field, this networking session is supposed to serve as a way for us to kind of come together, talk together, have exchange ideas and themes, and really the conversation starts here. But ultimately, we believe leaves this room. What we say more than anything at A&H is that employee ownership is not just having a moment, but we really want it to be a lasting movement. A lot of times we talk about having copycats, and we want to see more people in the employee ownership space. And so today is really to stir people into that conversation more than anything else. So I'm going to kick it over to our co-partners or managing partners and co-founders here. And one of the things I think we're always talking about with people is we're explaining a lot about employee ownership, right? And I wanted to kick it over to Todd to start us off actually here. Todd, the question for you is, when did you come across employee ownership? And actually, what's your why behind why you got into the space?
Hello, is this working? Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Todd Leverette, as Toby introduced. And Toby, that's a great question, but I'm gonna answer another question first. Well, not even answer another question. Let me first say what an honor it is to be here at SOCAP in a room filled with people to talk about worker ownership. A lot of the familiar faces that I know in the room, Allison, you know what I'm gonna say. Melissa, you know this. There was a time where, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, we couldn't get an invite to SOCAP. There was a time we had to crawl through the vents and kind of like sneak in through the side doors, and then we, get into some session about something and try to inject employee ownership into the conversation somewhere, somehow. So the fact that here we are in 2025, there is a dedicated track related to ownership, and that we're having a networking session on employee ownership. There's a panel, Allison is having a breakfast tomorrow morning around employee ownership. I think really is a testament to those in the field who've worked to uplift the work. Dave, good to see you, and some other folks in the room, and all those investors and supporters and friends who really believe in it. So I'm as excited by the opportunity as I am by the new faces in the room. Quick question. I hate this. Who in the room does work that is connected to worker ownership in some way, somehow already? And then, hands down, who's here because they're interested or want to find a way to have it connected to the work? Okay, just to get a feel for the room. So briefly, I'll go ahead and answer your question, Toby. My why for why I do this work, as my therapist says, it all really stems back from my childhood, right? That's where everything really comes from. But I do connect the work that I do now to how and where I grew up. So I'm from Northeast Ohio, part of the country called the Steel Valley. So steel mills, auto factories, a city called Warren, Ohio, close to Youngstown. And one of my most profound memories from being a kid was watching the city as a whole and the outcomes and the life and the quality and the life of the city as a whole really being impacted by how many shifts there were at the Lordstown Auto Factory plant, how many shifts there were at the steel mill or one of the 3 steel mills in the area. And really when they had that extra shift or things are going well, people were happy, people were joyful, people were excited and had hopes for the future. And then when they started cutting shifts because of whatever happened or jobs were moving overseas, really kind of what happened to the tenor of the people there. And I remember as a kid just hearing the grownups whisper and kind of talk. It's like, oh, I hear they're cutting the shift at Lordstown, or I hear they're adding a shift over at the steel mill. And it was that feeling of really being on this roller coaster ride of decisions that were made at some corporate level by some folks that were far away, really impacting the day-and-day life of my classmates and of my neighbors and of my friends. And that feeling of a lack of control, a lack of autonomy, which really stemmed from a lack of ownership, right? The ups and downs touched my own family in a very personal way and impacted our life in a very personal way. And so I remember when I left Ohio and went to grad school, and started this work, just really that feeling of how do you take that fear? How can you help less children and less families have that fear that a decision about their lives and the companies that they work for are how do you make it less disconnected from them and bring them into the decision making, bring them into the success because they already share all the risk of the downside. So I'm in this work to try to create better situations for kids like I was and families like I had growing up in Northeast Ohio. And I hope I'm sure everybody has their own story that can connect them to the work, but that's mine.
Yeah. One of the things I always hear Todd say often is that during his JD and MBA at Columbia, he never heard about employee ownership. I think one of the things that we're seeing currently in this moment is Todd has had the opportunity not only to go to Columbia this year in a classroom, MBA students, but also Cal Berkeley as well to talk about employee ownership. I'm actually a recent graduate from the Fuqua School of Business, and during my time in business school, I actually heard about employee ownership. So it's great to kind of see that momentum, not only in top business schools, but also across the landscape of our economy, talking more and more about employee ownership. Now I wanted to turn it over to Michael. Michael, would love for you to, one, give a little bit of your bio and your background, but also you've been in the impact investing space for a while. For you, as you stepped into employee ownership, what was one thing where you, to share a moment where you saw the power or potential around employee ownership?
Thanks, Toby. So been in for a while. That's very diplomatic of you. Thank you for that. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. I will do what Todd did. I'll answer the question I want to answer, and then I'll come back to the operative question. I think, especially given first of all, I hope Toby's right. I hope we leave here today with a whole bunch of new competitors out there for A&H, because right now, baby boomers own 40% of all the companies in the United States with 5 employees or more. And I can speak as the tail end of one of the baby boom. We're not getting any younger. So those businesses are going to be up for sale. And right now, their only options, if the kids don't want to take over, is to sell to private equity or to a competitor or to shut down. And what we want to do, and with your help, maybe more of us want to do, is make employee ownership a reasonable and easy transition for that seller. And that's what A&H is all about. I think given the number of hands that went up, people involved in employee ownership, I don't have to explain the moral reason why this is a good idea. And I'm not going to. I'm going to tell you the practical and pragmatic reasons that this is a good idea. So for my sins, I'm an elected official, part-time elected official. 49% of Americans today 49% of Americans aged 55 to 65, right before retirement, report having zero savings for retirement. Somewhere between 30 and 40% of Americans report living paycheck to paycheck. This is not, for people in the upper half of the economy, it's been fine. For people in the lower half of the economy, it's been a disaster. Real hourly work rates have risen maybe 10% in real terms over 30 years. The real price of a home has risen by 300%. So the path to ownership, which is savings, which is wealth, which is financial security through home ownership, is largely off the table for hourly workers. So we think that this model can help give regular working people a chance for financial security. So the average employee who retires from an employee-owned company has $150,000 in their share account. That's not money they put there. That's the shares they earn times the value of the company that's risen over time. That is a game changer difference for a working family, for an elderly senior who won't have to give up their apartment or their home if they have an unexpected medical bill. Those are the stakes that we're playing for, and they're both important from a moral point of view and a public policy point of view. I want to share briefly a story that was in the New York Times about a year and a half ago. It was a great story, front page, the wealth gap growing in this country, baby boomers handing off a bunch of assets to their heirs. And in this long article that was very well written, very well researched, showing the growing gap, there was a story about a guy named Leland Brawley, 53-year-old baker in Alabama. Started his job in the bakery about 15 years before at $13 an hour. He was now up to $20 an hour. So Leland is now making $40,000 a year in Alabama, 53 years old. And they report, the New York Times journalist reports that Leland is going to inherit this little tiny home that his mom has. And otherwise, he's just hoping that his savings will get him through. And his savings are $190,000. And the journalist didn't think to ask, how does a 53-year-old baker making $20 an hour in Alabama have $190,000 saved up? And the answer is because he works for Publix Supermarkets, which is an employee-owned company. That's the power of what we're talking about for ordinary people here tonight. And that's why I'm so excited to see you all here and everyone's so interested. With respect to my journey, I'm very proud of the work we did at Total Impact Capital. We started in 2009. We invested over $400 million around the world in healthcare in sub-Saharan Africa and clean water in Latin America. Really, really good stuff. But for me, and I won't bore you with the longer story, but for me, I realized that with what gas I have left in the tank, I want to make a difference in my country. And in my county, which is just south of here, it is arguably the fourth or fifth wealthiest county in the country. And when I went corner to corner in that county, I found public schools where the kids couldn't drink the water. I saw ag housing that would not be acceptable in most of the developing world where I've lived. That's just wrong, and we can do better than that. So when I met Phil and Todd and the notion of being able to finance employee ownership and make it easy for a seller to do what he or she would like to do, sell to their employees, preserve their legacy, keep that wealth and wages local in their city or county or state, and not sucked into New York or Miami into some, international private equity firm. That really resonated with me, and that's why I threw in.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, Michael. So this is a interactive networking session, so we're going to get kicked off with that. I mean, we will definitely take some more questions at the end, or we'll be lingering a little bit more. We do have a panel with Kellogg. I believe that's on Wednesday as well, where you'll hear more from Todd and also Melissa. I think Todd said this. Can you just raise your hand if you are currently working in employee ownership in some manner? Okay, awesome. Can I have you guys keep your hand up? Can you stand up, please? Awesome. And can you actually form a circle around? All right, so I just wanted to make that distinction really quick, because what we're about to do is I'm going to ask everybody to find a partner in the room. All right, so either find a partner or form a trio. If there aren't enough people that are in the employee ownership sector here, feel free to kind of create a group amongst individuals. But I'm not going to turn it over to you guys. Quick icebreaker, simply the questions I asked Michael and Todd. So they're on the board here. How did you first come across the concept of employee ownership? What motivates your interest? And then the second question is, share a moment when you saw the power or potential of employee ownership. Okay. So You might have 5 minutes, 7 minutes here, but basically I want you to find a partner in the room, and this is just your icebreaker. When did you hear about employee ownership? I wanted the people that are in the employee ownership space to stand out here on this circle so that we get a chance to kind of mix and mingle across maybe people who are interested, that you would get a chance to connect with somebody. So I'm gonna turn it over to you guys. Go ahead. So a lot of times I feel like what we do when we are at APIS and Heritage is we're explaining employee ownership, or it's a concept that people do not know about. And so I wanted to kick it off and give everybody a chance to kind of mix and mingle just to connect about their why behind employee ownership. But now I wanted to switch into more of a little bit of a guided activity. So what we're going to do is basically we have selected topics about employee ownership that we wanted you guys to get a chance to discuss, and then we'll kind of debrief key takeaways as a group. So you're either in a group at a table, or I'll ask those that are standing or in the back, go ahead and create groups of 3 to 4 people. And the idea here is that there are questions that we've left on your table, and there's certain themes that we want to flush out. So a couple of these themes: getting started with employee ownership, funding and financing employee ownership transactions, scaling employee ownership in your sector or community, and then policy and advocacy for employee ownership. Our ask here is there's a short amount of time. What we want you guys to do as a group is just maybe pick one topic. You won't have time to maybe get through all of these, of course, so just pick one topic specifically. And then there's guided questions on your table to kind of spark conversation around these things. So our idea here is, what do we need to do as a network to expand employee ownership? Part of that is, yes, we need to network and be in this room with one another, but what are some topics and conversations and common themes that we need to walk away with here and that we're talking about to continue to expand employee ownership more than anything else? A lot of great conversation going on in the room. We're super excited about this. Just even as I was walking around talking to some of our staff members, the reality is that people say a couple of years ago, you couldn't get this amount of people in a room talking about employee ownership, right? And so super excited for you guys to be in this room and continue this conversation. What we're going to do is go around group to group. Just want to see people share their key takeaway, and then allow some of my managing partners to share and elaborate on that. Todd, I need you. Todd. You said you would be mic runner.
I'm still here. Okay.
All right, let's go this group.
Okay. Yeah.
Corey Donovan, I'm with Impact PHL in Philadelphia. I think the real takeaway was just that I was in learning mode, and Allison's doing a road show next year, and we're going to be the steroid to that muscle in Philadelphia and really help to try to drive employee ownership as an investable opportunity in Philadelphia.
Awesome, and we'll just work our way around here.
My name is Travis Marsh from Oberon. We're a worker-owned cooperative. And I would say 2 takeaways. One, just a little plug for software that came up, Zilladar, for getting the conversation started earlier for people, and then building a lot of leadership, especially battle-tested leadership that can go and be taking over from the owners that are selling.
Stand up, introduce yourself.
Hi, Michelle. I run a company called Hiring, and I was just sharing that we have a baby ESOP called an ESIP, which is an employee stock incentive plan, which is a little less onerous. Thank you. And but it still is a lot. It's a lot. And then because we didn't have exit plans or being acquired plans, we found that it wasn't super helpful for our employees. So we started open book management. So now we have both, and our open book management has profit sharing on top of it. So
Explain open book management.
oh, yes. So open book management is based on a book called The Great Game of Business. And it's where everybody in your company is trained on your books. So whenever anybody comes into our company, we do back office support. we train them on our income statement. So it's how do you as a person impact the revenue of the company, the costs of the company, both your salary and benefits, and then also expenses of the company. And then we've tied profit sharing to that. So at the end of every half, we pay out profit. And every single month, we report on our wins and our losses and, how effective we've been. So that really helps, everybody feel like connected to the purpose and mission of our company.
Awesome. Todd, what is the importance of open book management in the employee ownership space?
Well, let me ask a question. How many of you all have ever worked at a company where they showed you the financials of the company and what the revenues and the profits are? Okay. Well, the way we think about it at A&H, and it's thought about more broadly across the employee ownership ecosystem, is that having ownership, in the case of an ESOP, it's a retirement plan. In the case of a co-op or EOT, it's structured slightly differently. Having ownership is not enough. You have to be treated like an owner, and you have to feel like an owner. And until you're treated like an owner, which how many owners of businesses don't know what their revenues are or what their profits are? Until you're treated like an owner and you feel like an owner, you're not going to start acting like an owner. So a key part of our investment thesis when we go out to investors is that investing in companies where everybody who works there thinks like an owner, feels like an owner, and is trying to drive the company towards success because it's going to equal success for them. Those are less risky companies. Those are better companies in a lot of ways, and the statistics prove that out. So I think open book management is a part of how do you make people how do you make people feel like owners, and how do you treat them like owners, and then watch their behavior changes. I love the framing of how does your job impact the revenues of the company or the expenses of the company on the bottom line of the company, and let people make their decisions based off of those, that knowledge there. So thank you, Michelle.
Awesome. I think you're in by this next group. So if you guys want to share your key takeaway, what theme did you guys focus on, and maybe what was one key takeaway?
Sure. Rebecca White. I'm from Harrington Investments, portfolio manager at an independent RIA. We were kind of focusing on number 3 and trying to figure out, I was kind of gearing it towards more of like rural, smaller, like there's challenges with the smaller businesses. And when they leave a small community, that leaves a really big hole. And so personally, I was kind of trying to feel like where we can scale this idea to those smaller businesses. But some of the solutions that came out of it were kind of partnering with local, like either the local governance, board of supervisors, really local grassroots, and also community development corporations, trying to kind of build that into more of the ecosystem to get that support for even smaller businesses. But that was our little takeaway.
Todd, any commentary on CDFIs in the employee ownership space?
I put it back on the room. Anybody in the room from those worlds, the CDFI world or the community development world? Okay.
Or a place-based approach, I think, is also what we're really highlighting, which is something we're always having a lot of conversations, I think, about investors, right? People want to see this in their local community more than anything else.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one of the stories that we tell when we're talking to capital, but capital that is connected to a place on large scale. So if we're talking to a state teachers pension fund or state employees pension fund, what we always say is, hey, you're making investments that are getting return on your dollar for the pensions, but what are the externalities of that? What are the impacts? Are you investing in something where your teacher's retirement fund is going up, but it's taking jobs out of your state, or it's taking companies out of your, or you're the spouse of one of the teachers just got fired because you invested in a private equity firm that just moved the company to another. And so it's a deeper level of analysis that I think when you're at the very, very local level, they can understand very well that connectedness, where kind of as you move up may not understand it as well. So I'll tell you, part of my job originally was, when I was at Democracy at Work Institute, was really traveling around the country, talking to economic development leaders, political folks, businesses, and everybody loves the idea, everybody loves the concept once you can kind of shift the framework of their thinking around ownership and workers. But the piece that we saw that was missing was the capital. So if you can bring the mechanism to make it happen, to make the actual transactions happen, then I think the number of folks who will do it and who will support it will be there.
And the other thing I always think about is we all know local businesses in our community. One of the things that we always talk about is the silver tsunami, right? The baby boomers that are selling their businesses. I think there's a lot more education that we can tell business owners about the opportunity to sell to their employees, right? So a local pace-based approach is also tell business owners in your community that this is an opportunity in terms of their succession planning. Let's go to this next group right here. I want to share what theme you guys may be focused on and a key takeaway.
So what was interesting at this table was that we had, let me get the institutions right. We had
IC Group and Fund for Jobs Worth Owning.
IC Group and Fund for Jobs Worth Owning.
Ownership Capital Lab.
VC Include.
All at the table. And so we got to learn a great deal about sort of the three major structures, operational structures for employee ownership. And then we got to hear about the need for better understanding and better capital flow, which just, okay, as an OG, I've been coming to SOCAP since 2011, 2012, something like that. We've known each other a long time. And in the early days of SOCAP, it was a very similar conversation, right? This is what impact investing is. Where's the money? We need the money. And then within, it took a little while, 5 or 6 years, the money was like flying through the windows. And so that's, I think, our table's hope.
Awesome. And this group, I don't believe, has gone yet, right? I'll give them the mic, Todd. Okay.
Hi, Paula Cadero. I'm from the Prebys Foundation in San Diego. I believe we were talking about number 3. So we were talking more about place-based and the importance, and Jamila gave some beautiful examples of how you can grow and build the local ecosystem. So in her community in Philadelphia, they have a nonprofit association, for example, that supports co-ops, the education, the development, for people to learn about co-ops. In my community in San Diego, we don't have that. We need that. So now as a member of a board of our foundation, I'm going to make sure that we start seeding those local associations to grow the ecosystem.
Was there a group right here?
Hello, everybody. I'm Rudy. You might know me by my pen name, Rudgali Sanatis. On Impact Alpha, I'm a ownership geek who gets paid to write about it, so living the good life. We were talking about different transactions, what makes sense, and the deal structure around subordinated debt. And we also spoke very briefly about ownership culture, like if it's a company that's a chain, like a radio chain, like what does the ownership culture look like when you have different stations spread out? Yeah.
So as we're talking about scale and employee ownership, just a little side comment. One of the most important things that's going to be necessary is awareness. And happy to hear that there's been awareness that's sparked in this room, that there's awareness that's being sparked across SOCAP more broadly. But I think the general public, the issue with the average worker, the average person, the average business owner, knowing that this is a thing and that this is an option is going to be really, really important. So I did want to give a shout out to Rudy and the Impact Alpha team for doing an excellent job. They started I'm going to use the wrong term, kind of a ownership economy beat or kind of section of Impact Alpha that covers not just employee ownership, ESOPs, co-ops, EOTs, but covers ownership from a housing standpoint, community land trust, and really spans the broad world of ownership. We're a part of a family of kind of ownership models and ownership structures. I know we kind of focusing on ESOP here, but there's a lot out there. And is a lot of the success that we've been able to have with bringing investors in and even getting business owners reaching out to us is because of the work of Impact Alpha. So thank you, Rudy, and your team. Yeah.
Awesome. I think we've worked our way through most of the tables, but I want to see if there are any other groups that would like to share. And I know we had a group up there, but.
Thanks. Hey, everyone. My name is Charlie Cooksey, and we had folks from St. Louis, Boston here, and we chose to talk about funding and financing, and we discovered that there are intermediaries that are pulling capital. We talked about the JP Morgans, the mission-driven finance, and then we also started to ask questions around, like, are there B Corps that perhaps are focused on funding worker ownership, and then there's the C Commons that have a focus on co-ops, and then we want to hear from you all. Where else can we better understand who's financing, and how do we better understand the mechanics of financing worker ownership and ESOPs? And then one other thought, which I heard you speak to, we currently in St. Louis have a revenue-based investment fund, but as we make this transition towards worker ownership, one of the things we've been talking about is, instead of starting a new fund, how do we work with philanthropic institutions as they think about their investment strategy to direct their funds towards existing funds like the APIS and Heritage, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, because this is a lot of work. And so that way we can, as we identify companies, direct them towards folks who do this work really well, so we can do one particular thing as you all continue to master your art.
You know what? I think that's a good plug for. You want to do an ICA plug? I don't know. She was asking about the broader world of financing.
Well, so I will say, my name is Dave Hammer. I'm the executive director of the ICA Group and the Fund for Jobs Worth Owning. And one way I think that's important to think about the employee ownership field is that there's different models, but they're really geared around size. So bigger companies, right, 50 or more employees, right, like, don't pay taxes, become an ESOP, right? Less than 50 employees, don't pay a lot of don't pay a lot of money to become an ESOP, because it's expensive, and even though you don't pay taxes, it doesn't work. So think about an EOT, think about a co-op, think twice about a co-op. Meaning you should give it twice as much consideration, because it's twice as good. So there are a number of small CDFIs and medium CDFIs in that space. So there's the Cooperative Fund of New England in the Northeast, or Cooperative Fund of the Northeast now. There's Shared Capital based in Minneapolis. There's the Local Enterprise Assistance Fund, and Nathan Hickson was here from there. They're based out of Boston, but we operate nationally. And then our fund, the Fund for Jobs Worth Owning. But there are a number of folks in that space that are out there really focused on kind of that smaller side and that co-op side of the space. And then there, and also would be, there's two other groups that don't get mentioned a lot, but I think are important for us to think about how we engage. One is Capital Impact Partners, which is an organization that works in, they do a lot of kind of impact investing stuff, but also the National Cooperative Bank, which has a $3.5 billion balance sheet, and is the sort of purpose is to finance consumer cooperatives, but they could also finance employee ownership.
I was not passed the mic, but I'm going to just add, if anyone is really interested in capital, the employee ownership capital piece, we're publishing at Ownership Capital Lab the first employee ownership capital roadmap. So there are roadmaps in gender lens investing and general impact investing and climate. If you want a copy of that, just come talk to me, and I'm happy to add you to our email list when it comes out.
Thank you both so much.
I think we had one last takeaway here before we wrap up.
Thank you. Hi, Rob Brown at the Impact Evaluation Lab. We had a wonderful conversation about all kinds of things, and somehow we wound up talking about the economic alignment of families buying baby food. But it was
fascinating.
It was a great conversation. But we got there because we were talking about economic alignment, right, and incentive structures. And as someone who's participated in ESOPs and has provided them for employees, I think pick your container, right? Pick your legal structure. There are different things that work for different people. But the key here is that you have to keep it simple. Your employees should know exactly what they're getting paid, why they're getting paid, how that aligns with the company performance, and how much they're getting at the end of the year. You define it how you want to define it that makes sense for your business. But some of the complicated math that people have to go through, I think, is actually disincentivizing, right? When you think you're getting, ripped off, right, by your employer, there's nothing less motivating than that. So keep it simple, commit to your employees what you think is right, and make it clear, and I think everybody benefits, right?
We all, just piggybacking off what you said, we always say if you see an employee ownership strategy or model out there and they're not investing the time and the energy into that education piece, right, into making sure people understand, into that training piece, into that ownership mindset piece, then that's a think twice and not, it's a think twice as in you may need to go the other way sort of situation. So that investment, and so that's what we work very closely with Democracy at Work Institute, our nonprofit partner, to make sure that training is injected into the companies in a way that that is appropriate for the workforce that you're turning into worker ownership. So excellent point.
Awesome. Well, we actually have to wrap up here. I wanted to turn it over to Michael, as we were just talking about. We had one more takeaway?
Well, only just this quadrant.
Yeah. Do you, yeah. Sean, do you want to highlight your session tomorrow on them?
Sure. So, thank you to you guys for this fantastic conversation. We had a great conversation about, scaling employee ownership and whatnot, and that's what we're talking about tomorrow. And our delegate-led session on reimagining M&A with employee ownership. So hopefully you guys can come there. That's a great question. It is 3:45 Pacific time. I did not know that until earlier today, so it's a great question to ask. So hopefully you guys can come along and have even a longer discussion about this stuff. It's a lot of fun, and it's incredible to see the impact that these guys are doing and others are doing in the space. So, who am I? Well, I mean, how much time do you have? So my name is Sean Matthew. I'm an attorney with a firm called SES ESOP Strategies. We're a team of attorneys and investment bankers that structure ESOP transitions throughout the country. So my favorite client is Apis and Heritage Capital Partners, which is genuinely true. Like, I mean, when they actually answered my email back in 2020, I was glad to have the response, and it's been fantastic being along the ride. So thank you guys.
All right. I'm gonna bring this to a close because we're gonna turn into a pumpkin in just a minute. So I'm gonna tell you about one of our enterprises that actually grows pumpkins. But before I get there, I want to note that there is a breakfast on employee ownership. See Catherine tomorrow morning if you want to find out more about that. I want to double down on thanking Impact Alpha for all the support for a whole lot of us in this room, not just on employee ownership. We all are grateful to Impact Alpha. And I also want to thank the Skoll Foundation, who is one of our co-hosts for this particular event, and all the support they've given us over time. I want to leave with a feel-good anecdote about how we see these changes happening in the field. So one of our third investment was a family-owned commercial nursery in rural Oregon, 120 jobs. This is one of those employers, if they go out of business, the whole community suffers. Grace, it was a long negotiation, but we were successful, and we're so excited to be having converted Blooming Nursery. The fall after the conversion happened, so their cycle is they grow during the winter and the cold months, and then spring and summer is when all the homeowners go out to the garden stores, buy their plants, and go plant them, and then it starts to slow down in the fall. So around the fall, you start walking around the 40 acres, which was on her family farm. She started this business 40 years ago to save her family farm. You walk around and you say, what are we going to do next year? She grows 2,000 perennials and shrubs and stuff, so 2,000 different kinds of perennials and shrubs. So she's walking around the 40 acres with her 3-4 lieutenants, and she said, and the lieutenants say to her, Grace, man, we had a great year. And she goes, we really did. We sold almost everything. It's really fantastic. And they go, but Grace, the year before we sold almost everything. She goes, it's been a really couple of good years. They go, Grace, why don't we grow more? And she said, well, I've been taking a couple million out every year. I'm doing good. And I didn't think you all wanted to work any harder, so I thought we were like at a good size. And they said to her, Grace, we're the owners now, and we'd like to grow. So they came back to the board. They presented the investment. We built 4 new greenhouses and a cold storage. They've expanded their capacity by 10%, and this year will be a record-breaking year for revenue and profit. That's the power of employee ownership. Thank you very much.